All right, welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're logging in from. We've got another great installment here with George Beitner in the art and science of pricing. And we'll have lots of time to work through some information, some slides that George has prepared, and lots of questions that you guys may have as the presentation goes along. So George, thanks for joining us, and I'll bring up your slides and let you take it from here.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Good morning, everyone. I think this is like a session number 4 of the art and pricing of signs, art and science of pricing signs. I need to somehow, I've lost my notes. Okay. Hang on here just a moment. I'm into a full screen. And I need to, let me see in the view. Nope, don't want to do that. One more thing, hold on here. All right, well, I lost my notes somehow. Let me exit here. Okay, now I've got it. I'm sorry about that, guys. All right, so last session we covered the definition of a substrate and various sign substrates and materials that they're made of, and some of the best use practices. We covered a quick example of how we might calculate the cost, excuse me, the cost of a sheet of MDO with applied vinyl graphics that had been laminated, and then the actual target time to do this work to assemble and potential profit outcome. This particular session will focus on lobby signs utilizing dimensional letters and various substrates. I view lobby signs, as impact signs. I view this as a kind of a piece of art. Usually takes a considerable amount of time, and you need to be compensated for it. A note here, be price proud. We've had some clients tell us that we're a little too expensive, but I look at what we do as anyone in their profession. Be great at what you do, provide great customer service, and clients will return. I feel it's important to understand that you have the capability, equipment, personnel, and knowledge to handle these projects, and you need to charge for that. Impact signs are usually a one-off, and all the costs that go into a lobby sign really needs to be taken into consideration. Since these are usually one-offs, unless, of course, you have multiple sites that will get you the same type of sign, a higher cost is required, and a higher sales price point must be considered. If possible, and this probably goes without saying, try to find where else this client's logo can be used. Once you've done their impact sign, they might need door graphics, vehicle graphics, safety signs, site signs, directional signs, exterior illuminated letters, trade show items, etc. Total facility signs and more. So if you received a logo or artwork from the client and transformed that into art or sign fabrication, we actually treat this as part of the cost for creating their sign and charge for our time. We never keep their logo from them, but store it for future use. And if they have other needs, we'll forward it to them. Some organizations do not do this. We feel it's their art, glad to forward it to them in any form for their use. Now, on to lobby signs. As mentioned earlier, I like to use the term impact signs because they are what the clients will first see when arriving at their office. It's important for you to share that they only have one shot at making the first impression. The information is important for the sale as well as the price you'll need to charge for the work you'll be putting into it. So let's get at it. First, the initial investigation site survey. A lot of elements need to be considered, like the size of the area, the wall finish, what's the lighting like, what is the finish of the wall? Is it drywall, brick, glass, or tile? Has it been painted or is some other texture applied that might affect the look and installation? The client may have provided their logo art, and now it's up to you to decide what materials, size, and installation methods might be used. If you do a site survey, or you can actually talk the client into doing this for us, we'll have them tape using blue tape so it doesn't mar the wall, a piece of 8.5 inch by 11 paper to the wall, and take a picture. This is used for references, for reference only. Be sure to back far enough to get the entire wall in the picture. If right behind a receptionist desk, try and get a good idea of placement without the receptionist blocking it, or installing it too high where it looks odd. All of this helps with providing an appropriate size of the sign. If the wall is wider, then try to fit the picture taken from the ceiling to the floor. This will help with desired elevation of the finished sign. We not only take into consideration the proportion of it, but also clear visibility. It needs to be seen, yet not over the top, huge. A rough idea of the size of the sign is important. A viewing chart here gives you an idea of the size of lettering that would fit best in the area considered. So a 1 inch tall letter can easily be seen 10 feet away. This is important, especially in a small lobby. If the lettering size has not been taken into consideration, you can be going back to replace it. By the way, we use this chart for exterior signs, especially with banners, since clients want letters to be huge. Now that we have a blank canvas, there are a ton of options to consider, each having its own price point. Does the client have an idea of what they want? That's the next slide. If not, you might be able to ask questions to see what thoughts they have and discuss options of materials to help you get some ideas to them for approval. It is difficult to price something until you know what it is. So maybe starting with examples of jobs done in the past with a price point will help the client decide how much they want to budget. Building a portfolio helps you get to yes. Dimensional letter options might include painted foam, PVC, or acrylic. Laminated metal, to the prior mentioned materials, are a great indoor product that has a low cost. These can demand a higher price. Metal letters like aluminum, bronze, brass, stainless steel are a higher end impact sign. Cut letters with vinyl applied to surface with sides painted a contrasting color are a good option. Another ease of use sign that can be fabricated is dimensional letters on brushed aluminum background or clear acrylic with standoffs. This is a great option if they feel they'll move soon and can relocate the sign easily, as opposed to the letters that are double stick taped and glued to the wall. So I'm going to give you some samples of lobby signs to consider. Each one has elements of cost and pricing. As you can see here in the next sheet, there's a pricing option that we put together. Go ahead and change that. Those are the steps that are involved with the costing. And we've given you an idea of what we would charge with the cost that we've taken into consideration. The next one is brushed aluminum on brushed ACM or ACM. These impact signs using this material with cut letters have more pop and can be mounted with decorative anodized aluminum hardware. The caps and barrels come in various colors. We usually provide aluminum. Another option is to do printed graphics or cut vinyl letters and include dimensional letters. There's lots of options. You might go through a couple of my slides here, Dan. Clear acrylic plaque, and that has some costs that are involved with that. And then there should be another. Okay. So these impact signs are fully 3D dimensional letters. They really look amazing once installed. The letters can be painted any color and easy to install. The clear acrylic plaque, that might be another one that's got to come up. Trying to see. Nope. Sorry, jumped too far ahead.
That one?
Yeah, that's good. These impact signs are easy to install and easy to relocate. The acrylic can have beveled edges or polished. The lettering can be on the front and back, adding shadows that enhance the overall sign. These signs can also be installed with decorative caps. The sample shown here has a cost as well as the other ones that I talked about previously. Okay, next one. Okay. So we talked earlier about in previous sessions about using a BOM, bill of materials. Bill of materials is taking all of your components into consideration. Add them up to get your material costs. Add your overhead, margin, and you should get a good idea what to charge for the project. By using standard costs, the elements going into this sign, we can determine what our pricing should be. As you can see, the markup is pretty strong. These are works of art. As mentioned earlier, I like to use the term impact signs because they are what the client's clients first see when arriving at their office. We have found over time that once we try to standardize our lobby sign by both square feet, use of materials, we get the same approximate sales point. By repeating this over and over, you'll find you'll have a rough idea before even starting the project what the sales point of the project will be, and this will allow you and the client to utilize your time more efficiently. So I hope this helps. So with that, I know I went through things pretty quick, and the pricing is in these slides for you to look at later. Are there any ideas from other owners that you want to share at this time?
Yeah, George, there's a question in the Q&A box that asks if you have standard markup and margin guidelines for different letter choices or materials or standoffs. Do you have just kind of a flat across the board markup margin that you're trying to hit, or do you change that based on the materials used, the style of sign it is?
I think overall, when we do the bill of materials and we find what our costs are going to be, we're taking into consideration our design time and then production time, we use a pretty flat 2.2, 2.4, sometimes just 2 times what those costs are. And then we adjust that accordingly, depending on who the customer is. In some cases, it's much greater, depending on who they are. It could be much less because we're doing, more than one. We're doing quantities that might be sent out to various locations. So on an average, we try to mark it up by that percentage.
George, just, from my end, as you take, this type of sign, as you are calling it here an impact sign, obviously it has to do with their logo. It's important to them. How often with this style of signage are you adjusting from that standard markup margin to more value-based pricing? And it's more often than not going up in price based on the margin rather than down in price to hit more of a market value.
Correct. And it has a lot to do with, as I mentioned earlier, being price proud and also understanding that, price is one thing, but selling it is another. And to get your customer to be aware of, what I had mentioned earlier, what you have that can handle their particular project, you're going to be able to charge more for that. So you have to be more price proud than not.
George, another question that just came in from Dan Lucarelli. How do you model these concepts in Corebridge? Now, granted, Dan, George is, I think, still using or was using Sirius, which is kind of the predecessor to Corebridge. But how are you building these models into your pricing system?
That's a good question. What I would strongly suggest is this work that we're doing to prepare our price for a particular lobby sign, impact sign, is when you do that off of I don't want to say scratch paper, but you can create your own bill of materials. It could be coming off of even an Excel spreadsheet. By adding all of the component pieces into it, I like to not share every detail with my client or my customer. I like to include that all into one price point. So once I've determined what I'm going to charge for that, And the line items could just include as simple as the manufacturing of the sign with the detail. Could also be design time, taking their particular logo and converting that into their lobby sign. And then lastly, installation, taking into consideration how far away we'll need to go to install this, how much time we're going to be on the road, how long it might take to actually do the install. And those are the three items that I would put into the system with the, with the history of the client. These are easy now to take and clone when you have another new order that comes in, modify the description of the lobby sign / impact sign, put in your cost for the design for whatever you calculate that to be, and then also your installation. And it makes it much quicker to do estimates and creating invoices as opposed to creating 4 pages of detail that go into a particular sign. It just makes it too cumbersome. And I think it's too difficult personally for the customer to get through all of that, determine what you're actually referring to.
Perfect. Just for the sake of simplicity here, you don't have to type your questions in. If you want, go ahead and raise your hand. I'll take you off the mute feature and you can ask your question live. And I should clarify, you can't just like physically raise your hand. I can't see that. You have to hit the raise hand button in Zoom. All right, while we're waiting for that, George, I'm gonna go back a couple slide or two. Yeah, you bring up some good, pricing models here. And just to kind of dig into these a little bit more, here with this clear acrylic plaque, you're actually, I think in this pricing, you're kind of showing that value-based pricing is really more the side that you sway with this, because your price here would be below $1,400 for the product if you were just doing that standard 2 times markup. And then you've got your install cost in there as well. But tell me a little bit, how do you appropriately plan for your install time? Do you find that you have more of like a flat rate for that for each different style of sign? Do you quote out installation uniquely to each project? Talk a little bit through, how you plan for install, how you quote for install when it comes to these different types of lobby signs.
When we look at any project that's coming up, and we want to determine, because we're in North San Diego, so some of the work is actually south down into San Diego, 35, sometimes 45-minute drive, or if we're going north up into the Riverside area out to Camp Pendleton. We have to take into consideration our drive time, as anyone would. I don't care if you're a plumber or an electrician or any other service organization, the time to get to the particular project, the time to return, how long that we estimate that the actual install will take. For instance, on a clear acrylic plaque with the raised letters, everything's been built in-house. It's a quick install to be able to go in, set up your pattern, drill the holes, set your anchors, and then screw in your barrels and set the sign in place, and then add the caps. So the install time there is small. Now the customer might see a price of $750 and say, well, it's a little excessive. Your guy was only here for 15 minutes. And, well, that's true, but you have to consider the time it takes to get to the job. And this was south of us. Unloading, parking, loading everything into the elevator, getting to the site, that all has to be taken into consideration. So this is something we can also talk to our installer about, or if we use an outsourced installer, we provide the project ahead of time. They quote us what they're going to charge for it, and then we add our margins on top of that, what we feel is something that is appropriate. So it's something you start to get a feel for, and you also want to, if you can, and this is important, if you have your own installer in-house, is to have them mark down on their work order how much time it took them to actually, they left the shop at 8:15, they got back at 11:15. There you've got 3 hours, you've got your hourly rate that you've already established for your shop rate, and then you can continue to utilize that moving forward. Now, what makes it difficult, and this is something we run into on a regular basis, is if you don't have, and I think this is another subject altogether, installation, because our company does very well on installations on an annual basis as far as what we use as a not only a profit margin but a profitable element to our company, is those multiple trips that you have to take because you weren't aware of what that interior wall was, or they didn't call ahead of time to say that they were coming. Your installer didn't schedule it ahead of time. There's some steps that you have to take, and actually an installation form of all those things in place, stating we'll be here at this particular time, who's the contact, make sure that there's furniture that might be in the way, you've got to move out to get to the actual area to install. You have to take all these things into consideration and have a list of all of the things that your installer needs to take with them. The worst scenarios when they head off onto a particular project and they get downtown and they call back to the office and, oh, we forgot the sign. And now you've got to grab somebody from the shop and throw it in the truck and jam down to meet up with them because it was one simple, or they forgot a level or a tape measure. All of these things are important to take into consideration. So you're not making multiple trips. You do it one time, you get it done efficiently. Your installer knows that we've only given this X amount of time, and that way your expectations and theirs are being met.
George, you brought up a good point, and it was kind of a funny reminder for me yesterday. The idea of being price proud and the experience that it takes to get to that point. So you mentioned, the customer maybe pushing back on that $750 install price, not accounting for the time to get to and from, but also the expertise to be able to do it in 30 minutes. I had my oven repaired yesterday, $500 repair, and took the guy 10 minutes to change out the part. And I said, gosh, $500 for 10 minutes. And he goes, well, it took me a lot of years to be able to do it in 10 minutes. So
Yeah.
To that point, and it was a good reminder for me in that of, there's years of experience in being able to do it that quickly. So you can't always charge for install based on the amount of time that it's taking you in the moment to do that job.
Right.
How many of your installs do you kind of look at that your team can actually do it faster than what it's being quoted at? And you're basically quoting it at a minimum value because it took you that long to be able to get to that speed and efficiency, but you should still be billing that price. Where do you kind of balance that?
Well, I think what happens early on when you first start out, you don't have any idea of what it's going to take. You have no base point, and then over time you start to learn that. The next thing that you learn is that by establishing some kind of goals where you have buy-in from your employees that they want to go ahead and beat that time. Now, again, you don't want them to rush through it and come back and say, I got it all done. They get a phone call that it fell off the wall or something like that. That doesn't help. But if there's no targets, if there's no goals, it just leaves things wide open. And we like to include our installers, again, not only inside but outside, of an estimated time they think it might take them up front, and not just go ahead and sugarcoat it and load up a lot of extra time. That helps you to load your shop with multiple installs for a particular day, and or adding with regards to organizing your shop in such a way. If I send somebody down to San Diego for an install, I want to do it on a day that I have some site surveys to do, or there's something else to do down in that area. So we're not just taking multiple trips back and forth. That's important to to go ahead and build your shop in such a way where you're going to be profitable in almost everything you touch or everything you do.
Let's see, a new question in the chat window. Dan Lucarelli's asking, do you break out travel time and install time in tracking and goals?
I just use it all as one. I don't separate that at all. Each job is specific and different, and because of that, even with our larger projects, when we do our construction projects, we realize that it should take a certain amount of time to do an install of, say, a complete building of ADA signs. But we also realize that there's only 7.2 hours in a day, and there'll be travel time to it, back and forth. And depending on the quantity, as you roll that up, one day can turn into a day and a half, which now for me, the day and a half is really 2 days, because it's not gonna get done in the day and a half. Or you want to hedge it even further and charge for 3 days for that particular install. There's a lot of elements that go into it, and you start to get, as anyone does in any particular business, they get a feel for what your standards become, and you have to take into consideration all the other costs that are involved. You got your fuel costs, you got your labor costs, you got equipment that you're buying or tools. All these things come into play. And in this particular case, for the $750, there might have been some tools that we had to buy to do this particular install because it went over tile or was applied to something that was a little bit more difficult. So when that happens, you have to account for it, and you want to build it into your price. Just like what I was mentioning earlier, I mean, this particular project with the clear acrylic, I didn't charge for a full sheet of acrylic. I only charged for a quarter of it, because on this job, I happen to have a remnant that was from a prior job who paid for the full sheet. So when that happened, this is what was left over. So I'm going to charge them for a portion of that as opposed to the full price.
Great. All right, who else has a question? I figured out how to allow you all to talk, so you can just unmute yourself. If you got a question, come off of mute and ask your question.
Come on, don't be shy out there.
Dan, go ahead. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Holy cow, I like technology.
There you go.
George, whenever you put proposals together, how much detail do you provide?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that all. How much was
when you're putting proposals together, George, how much detail do you provide in that proposal? Do you kind of break it down as much as you have here in this slide, or do you just say acrylic lobby sign, bang, here's your price?
Right, as I mentioned earlier, I take what all the elements that are going into that, and I might put that in the detail for that, and it has a lot to do with, think about from this standpoint, you don't know anything about signs. You're now receiving this quote from a sign guy who knows everything. Do you want to go ahead and, as a person receiving that, receive so much information you don't even know what the heck you're talking about because it's, completely Greek to you? Or I'm going to get a half-inch thick acrylic cut letters mounted to my wall, painted black. Now, they don't need to know that you're going to glue and tape them to the wall, and that you're going to have a pattern, and you're going to, all the other details that might go into it.
No, I get all that. The question that I'm really struggling with is the presentation part of the proposal. And what I mean by that is, let's say a lobby sign or
Yes.
whatever, raised letters, half-inch or three-quarter acrylic, fancy schmancy, standoffs, all that crap.
Right.
For, let's say $1,000.
Yep.
Okay. Do you put a line item in for installation?
I do a separate line item for installation.
Okay. Do you do a line item for design services?
Yes, I do. So typically in my quotes, I'll have those 3 line items: design, sign, and installation.
Okay.
And the installation might have details or might not. It might just say install sign.
Yeah. Okay. And
Because I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think, and I don't see it in my PowerPoint here, but it might be because I've got it too small on my screen. But you might, I think in this, you'll see a sample of the drawings that we provide. Is that in the PowerPoint, Dan, did it show up?
I don't think I remember seeing.
It should be next to my samples. They were in there originally. I don't know why they might not be, because but that would be helpful, I think, and I don't know, it may have been lost because of the size of that. But in our drawings, we'll show all those details, Dan. We'll show you the materials, the size of the letters, the way a side view. So
okay.
when you get the estimate, it says, yeah, here's your sign, here's the other elements to it, the design and installation. But now you've got, and a good question that people have is, when do you actually show a drawing of this, and when you don't? I like to do a drawing ahead of time, because I may or may not get the job, right? And you have to have a feel for that too. But the idea behind this, if you can get your client to smell the leather, if you get them into the car and they can feel the steering wheel and smell how good a new car is, they see this drawing and it shows those details, then they're more likely than not. And you have disclaimer on it too. That's states that, you know, you can't use this in any other place. I don't know how legal that is, but you want to give them an idea of what they're getting. Right away, they can go back and go, I like that a lot, but I was hoping it'd be a little bit larger, or I was considering. Now you've got something to work with, and you can tell them at that point, well, you can see that, you know, this is the idea we have behind it. You get us a deposit. Now we can refine these drawings for you to get you to yes, and you get us a deposit, and we'll move on with your project and get it going. But once you sign off on that, then we'll schedule the manufacturing and the actual installation.
Okay, and again, I'm okay with that. What I'm struggling with is trying to be different and less descriptive before the customer gives me money, because I've had instances where the customer has provided me with details of other companies that they're talking to.
Yeah.
Or vice versa.
Right.
I'm perfectly okay with almost engineering quality documents once you give me money and we've started the project, because at that point in time, the comparison to other guys is over.
Right.
Okay. But what I'm trying to do is to change the rules a little bit in terms of, hey, I got a proposal from X, I got a proposal from Y, I got a proposal from you. Let me take the really good ideas from you and talk to this other guy because he's undercutting you by 1% or 5%.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm trying to do that balancing act for how much detail do I put on the proposal. Okay. I do want to do some kind of mock-up, and we put a copyright InDesign Factory watermark on the mock-up.
Right.
It may not prevent anybody from using it, but it'll cause folks who are professionals about this to think about it.
Right. So
Okay.
Here's a couple of ideas or approaches that you can consider. And I may have talked about this in some previous sessions. And this, again, pricing is one thing. It's to just being someone that throws out estimates all the time. Yeah, your percentage might be 20% that you're going to get the job. But the sales side of this is to have more of a relationship with that client to the point where first of all, as you know, you're going to have to be comparing apples to apples. You know, if they're going to be providing something that's a little bit different, a little less of a material cost, and who knows, they could be working out of a garage. You've got a full-fledged shop, and you've got your overhead. Those are different elements, but you'll get to choose now whether you want to do this job. If somebody's cutting you by 1% or 2%, they've done a better job making the sale than you have. Not to insult you in any way, but you could be in a situation where you're in the driver's seat. You say, okay, how many of these particular, how many quotes are you looking for? How many companies are you talking to? I'm talking to 3. All right. Well, after you get your first 2, give me a call and say, okay, I've got a couple here. Let me take a look at them, and I'll tell you whether or not I'm going to be able to compare apples to apples and the costs they're going to charge. And then I can give you the opportunity to know that what I'm going to do for you is going to be, a terrific sign. It's going to be over the top. It's going to be the best value. It's going to be all those things. And then you can decide whether or not you want to do the job. I've had situations where they've done that with me, and I looked at it and went, holy crap, I would have charged way less for that. Now I can charge more, still get the job, and still make more money.
Mhm.
But it's where you put yourself into that driver's seat. We find, we'll talk to other clients and even our contractors, and we'll tell them we're not quoting any more projects with you because we're just a number. You're not willing to work with us in any way. You're just blindly, taking the lowest number that you get, and you're dealing with it. And you may eventually come back to us later because you get what you pay for. But there's that combination, that balancing act that we all do all on a regular basis. And if you find, and what's really weird, and I've had even clients tell me, you're not the cheapest, you're not the most expensive, you're right in the middle, and I'm going to go ahead and take you. So and then there's other times where, yeah, you're the most expensive, and I like what you shared with me about responding and following up. You don't want to be a pain in the neck, because that's another question you get all the time too. How often do you follow up? Once a week, once every couple of days. And some of you newer owners have the capability to see how many times someone's actually looked at your design, and then a good follow-up call at that particular time. Hey, I was just wondering, because you already know they've looked at it 5 times. Now it's time for you to give them a call, say, hey, I just want to follow up, see how things are going. Oh yeah, that's right, I want to order that now. So there's different methods. Again, I think sales, pricing, processes and procedures, all this stuff comes together in one, because you're all custom. Everything you do is custom.
I think one thing that's good to note in this, just based on who we have in attendance for the webinar, and for a lot of people that are going to be watching this on the recording, one of the things to kind of add to George's point of building that relationship with the client, it kind of relates more to the pricing side of it. You're going to have more control over the pricing if you're manufacturing the product yourself as opposed to outsourcing it. And so a lot of your examples here, George, are really kind of built on the fact that you're making it in-house. So you're going to have a little bit less flexibility in pricing, but if you have the opportunity to really build that relationship with the client, you can get past some of those pushbacks, and also figure out where do you have some wiggle room to lower if you need to, based on future opportunity. So there's some things that roll in there, but I think, Dan, to your original question, offer enough detail that speaks to what you're providing, but not so much that goes into step A to step Z of production, but break out those items of product, installation, design, because you need that from a tracking perspective in your pricing system, so you know where your revenues are coming in.
And I also don't want the customer to say, we've done projects with 6 or 7 or 10 different elements to create a branding experience in the office. Okay. A lobby sign, a conference room sign, a word wall, a bunch of graphics, a bunch of frosting on a window. And we put it together as the project. I didn't even break out installation. And the relationship that I built with the customers is he just asked me about the lobby sign, and apparently he was talking to 2 or 3 others, and my lobby sign off the top of my head was less than the other guy. So as soon as I earned that trust, he trusted me with everything else.
Right.
But I didn't break out wall mural, graphics for conference room, word wall, lit lobby sign, unlit conference room logo. I didn't break those out as individual line items. I just made one big project.
Right. And that's a good approach.
And it, let me build margins on all of the stuff that had high margins.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the difference there in presentation on the quote is really based on how you want to track it. If you want your pricing system to track each particular component so that you have the ability to measure and analyze where your work is coming in from,
Yeah.
that'll give you that ability. If you want it as one big lump project so that you can bake in higher margins on certain things, you don't have the same analytical power through your systems, but it perhaps overcomes some of those challenges by pricing things out individually.
Yeah.
So it's all preference.
Yeah, when it's all said and done, you want to make sure whatever you're doing has somewhat of a profit center to it, and that you're at the end of the month you're profitable. Now, how you analyze that, how you break it out, that's up to you. And we do run reports, and it shows even on an annual basis who our best customer was, what our best products were, because we track different products that we use. How you use your system is going to help you manage your business.
Yeah. Okay.
Who else has a question? Go ahead and take yourself off of mute. I guess, George, I'll ask one while perhaps somebody's thinking of one. You've given some different options here with lobby signs. How often going into a quoting process with the customer do you offer them different options, and you're presenting perhaps 2 different quotes or 3 different quotes for options, perhaps because they have no idea what they're really looking for, and you don't want to just go in with one thing and say, hey, here's what I got to offer, and they don't like it?
That's a really good question too, because you could spend a lot of time with all kinds of different designs, all kinds of different ideas. And I think to start out is to have some kind of a discussion on what their future looks like, how long you're going to be in that particular location. And that helps with the sale of the project too. I mean, you get done, it's a $1,500, $2,000 lobby sign. They might look at that as, wow, that's a lot of money for this interior impact sign. But then ask them, how long are you going to be in business? How long are you going to be in this particular office? You're going to be here for 10 years. It's $1,000 sign. Can't you afford, $100 a year? You're going to be here for 10 years. You can start to create just some kind of communication in such a way where you get an idea of what where they're at and where they're going. Because just to blurt out, this is what the flat cost is. There's not a lot of things that have been taken into consideration, and you're going to find you need to do that so you have a direction to head in to provide something right away. And it could be just a couple of different choices. Here's individual cut letters mounted directly to the wall, and here's individual letters mounted to a piece of brushed aluminum, or it could be just a backer that's going to be on the wall. You have to kind of get them to commit to a direction for you to be successful.
All right. Any other questions that anybody may have before we call it quits? Kim, I think I see you took yourself off of mute. Go ahead.
George, do you charge any fee to go out and look at a site for someone? Because we're having people wanting us to go out, look, produce renderings. I got 2-3 hours in the project, and then they're like, oh, really it's $500 for that. We're just,
Yep.
that's way above budget. And that's, we're kind of in an area where they're pretty cheap. They're pretty tight. Like, so we're kind of trying to overcome some of that because we're building our business. We're new owners. So we're trying to be the local guy who will help that, because there's another guy in town that does some big stuff and he's a pretty good established company, but he won't even do, local things for local people. So we're trying to build and gain love and affection in order to grow our business, because that's kind of how this community is.
Yeah, and you're not in a different community compared to other communities, because there is a percentage of time that we do spend where we receive nothing for it. And unfortunately, we're not a plumber, we're not an electrician, and I don't know how these guys were able to create an environment saying, okay, if we're going to come out and look, it's going to be $95 just to find out what you're looking for. It doesn't, for some reason, doesn't have in the sign industry unless you're doing electrical signs. And there might be some owners that are out there that have been a little bit more creative in saying, okay, we do charge a fee to do this, but we'll go ahead and deduct that from your final project. And this is what, we're going to charge you $85 to come out and take a look. And buying the sign from us will, but that's you might get just turned down flat for that too. Well, you're going to charge for that, I'm not going to do it. So it's a balancing act, and you have to. And that's the other question that comes up all the time too. Okay, I'm glad you called us. Do you have a budget? No. All right. Do you have any idea that an interior sign typically runs between X and X, X, Y, and Z, $500 and $1,000. Would you consider spending that kind of money for your impact sign because of how important it is? Well, that was kind of, that's the sales side of this whole thing as far as pricing. If you can get them to show their hand and provide some kind of a budget, and not just, when you get to a point in your business where someone calls up and they want something as simple as lettering for their Zodiac boat, and you decide that you've got to charge $200 to even to create an invoice and start a layout with the right size letters and whatever it might be, then you have an idea whether or not these people are serious or not. And you want to get, for lobby signs, for me, as I mentioned earlier, they are a piece of art, and they really are. I mean, they're fantastic when they're up. They look terrific, and there's nothing better than the satisfaction you get from that. But I want to spend my time on projects that are going to make me money, and I'm going to try to spend my time more so finding clients that are going to buy multiples. If this is a company that needs a lobby sign because they're starting up a new business and they want people to be well received when they first come into the office, and then on top of that, they're going to want window graphics, and they're going to want vehicle graphics, and they're going to want an exterior sign. Now we're talking. But a lawyer, you know what I mean? It's not going to be, I understand right away, there's going to be some limitations to that. So you want to, one-offs you need to be compensated for one-offs. Multiples, it's a whole nother story. Two things I don't like, I'm not a big fan of residential or new restaurants, because the restaurant's going to do everything they can to build out put their grease traps in, everything they need to take care of to get their restaurant up and running. And then they call me and go, I forgot about my sign, and they have no money left over. And you're going to go and design a sign for that one location at one time. I'm not a fan. I know I'm going to go up against a couple other people. It's going to be a lot of extra effort that's going to go into it. And if they like me, they'll probably go with me. But they're going to be looking for their best price, their cheapest, whatever it might be. I'm going to look for corporate money, look for multiples. And that's where that repeat customer that comes in over and over and over again is going to help you build your business. So you need to really focus on getting to yes right away before you go ahead and spend a lot of time and just get a no.
Well, they usually like me and I usually get yes, but I feel like I'm having to struggle to get yeses. Like I feel like I've done half the project before I get like the, oh, yes, we'll definitely do it. And we've got a couple corporate things going, but
Good.
I would like to get more.
Well, you're starting out, you're building your business. I think I look at it like planting an oak tree. You know, you feed the acorns in the ground, you put some water on it over fertilizer. It takes some time to build the business, but it'll grow. It'll flourish, and you'll see the results from your efforts. And once you start to learn too what works, you're going to lean more towards that than what does not.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We got time for one more question.
Or if somebody else has got another idea.
Hey, Dan. Hey, George. It's Steele.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just sharing another thought related to Kim and that whole process. Yeah, we take a little different approach here, starting in, you know, in 3.5 months.
Yeah, your audio is cutting out a little bit.
Got out altogether. Theo, are you there?
Let's see if I can.
Hang on, I just got off my other phone, but
there you go.
we've taken a little different approach here at Covenant Signs and Graphics. We've been open 3.5 months. Part of the concept here that we're looking at is we're trying to be different. I think I took on what Kim said, is they're trying to be different than their competitor across town. If their competitor across town isn't jumping in the car to go meet people, then go do that. Yeah, that's an investment that might cost some time, but you're going to win hearts and minds of customers. I think that's just a big thing, and we've learned that quickly. Is yeah, we're looking at a lot of stuff, but every single time we go and meet a customer, we learn something, and that's helped us try to figure out how to get better in the sales process, how to get better in the proposal process, how to get better in the site view process, how to get better in how we're going to build the sign, install the sign. So we look at every single one of those opportunities learning, and then yeah, some of them don't work out. We say that's a key investment in our time and our energy, but it's been a learning opportunity.
Right.
And then if we can win that heart and mind of that particular customer, even if we don't do anything for them, oh yeah, those guys at Covenant Signs are different. They came right out, they talked to us, they're friendly. That builds on itself. And you know, they're going to talk to 10 people, and you know, with 6 degrees of freedom, you cover everybody. So if they say a couple good works, I didn't go with them because, but boy, they're sure nice people. And that spreads in a good way too. And we found that that's been a positive way to start overcoming some of the competition. Doesn't solve all the problems, but it certainly creates some positive momentum. Hope that helps.
Good point.
We're approaching the end of the hour. One thing I'd like to add in, here as we close today. Yeah, George has talked a lot, and I think the entire Sign World team, we speak a lot to the idea of being price proud. One of the things that I think helps you in your ability to market products like these and be price proud is taking great images of the work that you do to build your portfolio. And I think Sign World owners do a great job of this, of taking pictures of their work. One thing that can really help is just the idea and the concept of taking images that really truly show success, not just a great product, but a happy, smiley customer in the image with the product. If you can take some of those, that ultimately now that next customer coming in is looking at your portfolio, whether it's a picture book you take to them to the job site for a site visit, or they're looking on your website and they're seeing happy, smiley customer after customer after customer on your website, it shows that maybe your pricing isn't all that bad, because there are people that are happily paying that price and they're getting a great product, and they're completely happy with the end result.
Right.
So the more you can do that, and you don't want to do it for everything, but you want to pick and choose those categories as we keep going through these different product lines. You want to pick those product lines that are important to you, that you want to grow your business off of, that give you the ability to create growth and scalability, but also a wide array of product lines that you can service through cross-selling, like lobby signs. It's a great way to get in with a business, and they have lots of other needs. Again, if you can use these channels and show happy, smiley customers, it gives you more ability to really work through the art of pricing rather than just the science of pricing and accounting for your materials. Now you're accounting for the value because you're able to show that. So that's one thing I'd encourage all of you to take into consideration, is just as you take those pictures, get your customer in the picture. If you can't get the customer in the picture, tell your installer to go change their shirt and have them get in the picture. And it's just something there that ultimately shows somebody as a happy, smiley person standing next to that sign. It just shows success. So before we close, Dan, I see your hand up one last time here. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can't stress enough the value in adding emotion to your pictures. And the emotion is what I call a happy customer picture. And it's not just a picture of a guy with a smile. You want to ask your customer to assume a ta-da pose. So if you ask them to assume a ta-da pose while looking at the camera, you will add emotion to the picture, and it will add far more value than anything else that you can do in terms of promoting your work.
Very true.
That's it. That's
Yep.
it.
That's all I got.
And so with that, ta-da.
Ta-da! Well, very good, everybody. Thanks for joining in today. George, awesome job. Thanks for putting this information together and working through not only the information, but also the questions around lobby signs and the art and science of pricing these. We've got more of these art and science of pricing installments coming down the road. Stay tuned to those emails coming out from Sheree. George, when's the next one, and what's the topic?
I think we're 2 weeks out, and the topic is a surprise.
The topic is a surprise. So you got to log in. You got to be ready for it. We got more great information for you.
All right.
With that, everybody, thanks for joining in today. Have a great day. Go sell some lobby signs, and we'll see you here in 2 weeks.